Coming up, a look ahead at the South Carolina Republican primary and a deep dive into concerns surrounding the age of the presidential candidates on this week's IndigiPolitics. Plus, we have the recap of the 13th annual Bay Area Two-Spirit Powwow. We have those interviews, plus headlines ahead on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amirawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. I am Aaliyah Chavez. We start today in Washington, D.C., where two major federal agencies want to strengthen representation for Alaska Natives on its Federal Subsistence Board. The Department of the Interior and the Department of Agriculture are proposing adding 3 new subsistence board members. The new additions would be nominated by federally recognized tribal governments in Alaska. Alaska Natives heavily rely on subsistence living for food, shelter, and clothing. In a press release, DOI officials say the new members would bring personal experience in order to address the unique cultural needs of Alaska Native people. Staying with news about Alaska, officials are praising the USDA for its plans to purchase seafood from the state. The United States Department of Agriculture will buy $100 million worth of Alaska pink and sockeye salmon. The purchase will support Alaskan communities by providing jobs and helping those experiencing food insecurity. According to Yupik Congressional Representative Mary Peltola, the agreement is a first step in putting more Alaska seafood in federal programs and supermarkets across the country. We head now to North Dakota, where a new program is increasing the number of Native American teachers in the state. In a partnership with the University of Jamestown, the Minnewacan Public School, and the Northeast Education Services, this initiative will support Native Americans pursuing teaching careers. Despite schools in the state being populated by 90% Native Americans, there are rarely Native teachers. The goal of the program is to support Native students in finishing high school, getting them exposed to college, and then on the path to becoming educators. In Michigan, millions in funding is set to expand educational experiences and facilities at Strait State Park. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources received a $3.6 million grant from the Mellon Foundation. New additions will include a learning commons for exhibits, powwow ground structures, and a community kitchen pavilion. The project is led in partnership by the Department of Natural Resources Michigan Resource Center, the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians, the Bay Mills Indian Community, and other tribal communities in the area. Construction is expected to begin in summer 2024 with completion in 2025. Well, last year was the first time in over a century that buffalo returned to roam free on their homelands on the Blackfeet Reservation. Now the documentary Bring Them Home explores buffalo revitalization efforts from Blackfeet citizens. Brother and sister duo Ivy and Ivan McDonald co-directed the documentary, highlighting that this is not just a story of the buffalo, but of the resilience of their people. Filmmakers point out that the loss of buffalo from the land meant the loss of the Blackfeet way of life, the trauma of which still reverberates today. Actress Lily Gladstone, who grew up on the Blackfeet Reservation, narrates the documentary and told Variety this is one of the most precious collaborations of her life. The documentary will premiere at the Big Sky Film Festival in Missoula, Montana on February 24th. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. On this week's IndigiPolitics segment, we are previewing this weekend's Republican primary in South Carolina, and we are also talking about the swirling concerns over the age of the two major presidential candidates. Here to talk more about this is ICT political correspondent Pauly Denetclaw with regular contributor Michael Stopp, who is the CEO of SevenStar Holdings.
Welcome back to the Newscast, Mike.
Thanks, Pauly. It's great to be here.
So first off, the South Carolina primary is just days away for the Republican Party. And can you tell us a little bit about what Nikki Haley's chances are in that race? And also, what are her chances of becoming the party's nomination? And a little bit about the process for that.
Right. So Ambassador Haley, who used to be Governor Haley of this state, unfortunately, is losing to Donald Trump in her home state at a 2-1 margin. That is definitely not good for a candidate to lose in your home state, certainly when you were the governor, and certainly it's such a large margin. But she has vowed to stay in it to the end and not to go anywhere. And I think that means she's going to stick around as long as she has money. That's really what drives campaigns. And people are wondering why. Well, the truth is it has something to do with the little-known process, with the way the delegates work and the way conventions work. We learned a lot about electors, I think, in 2020 or 2021 especially, and about how that process works. Presidential electors are actually officers under the U.S. Constitution of the government. And they cast their votes in December in their home states. And most states now have a law that requires electors to vote according to the popular vote in their state. They don't have discretion, as they used to vote for who they wanted to. Now, when it comes to delegates, it's a little bit different. They are not officers of the state under the Constitution. They are actually members of a private organization known as the Republican National Committee and the Democrat National Committee. So they don't have the same legal requirements. So what that means is, with someone like Donald Trump, who we don't know what his future is going to be this year, we've already seen some what would be detrimental and career-ending events for a politician, still has many things hanging over his head, including a number of Supreme Court cases. So as we move through the primary process, there is a chance that Nikki Haley could win delegates at the convention. Convention delegates are not required to vote how their states vote. There is a law in place in most states that tell them to do that, but that law has never been challenged. And the major problem with it is most of these delegates are going to be voting in another state. So it is difficult for a state to enforce its own law for an action taken in another state. The other issue is, unlike electors, delegates are part of a private organization under the RNC and DNC, and it is courts are reticent from telling private organizations how to run their business. So we could see some very interesting things happen at the convention. And I think that what we see with Nikki Haley is her attempting to be the front runner if there's going to be some kind of convention upset.
And will this election tell us anything that we already don't know about the Republican primary? And also, what can we learn from past elections that could talk a little bit about what the future holds for the primary?
Right. So I don't think it's going to tell us anything we don't know. It is Donald Trump is going to be the nominee in name only, perhaps, as we move forward. Another part of this convention process is people feel like they're actually voting for the president or presidential nominee when they go into these presidential preferential elections. Well, there's a reason why that word preferential is in there. You're not actually voting for Donald Trump or Nikki Haley or the current president, Joe Biden. You're voting for delegates to represent you to vote for them at the conventions. So at the conventions are when the actual votes for the nominee are cast. And we have seen times in history, the 1968 convention, Democrat convention in Chicago was tumultuous. Supposedly one of the most difficult and unexpected conventions in American history. And then in 2008, we had something similar come up whenever we saw Barack Obama versus Hillary Clinton, where we saw Barack Obama get a number of the assigned delegates, but they had such a thing called superdelegates. And that's both Republican and Democrats have superdelegates, meaning they're not assigned to any particular nominee and can vote their will at the convention. And so there was a concern that if Barack Obama won all the designated delegates, that the superdelegates could still give the nomination to Hillary Clinton. So the convention process and the delegate process is something most Americans are not used to. And I think we will see in both conventions this year, they're going to play a bigger role than Americans have expected in the past. And there's going to be a lot of discussion going, well, why do we cast that vote if my delegate or my state didn't vote that way? So it's best to understand it now.
And there is ongoing coverage about the age of President Joe Biden, as well as Donald Trump. And do you think that in general, Native voters would care about the age of each of these candidates? Would that be an issue for Native voters?
I don't think so. We obviously very much honor our elders. Even our elected officials look to our elders for guidance. I don't know that their age is necessarily an issue here, especially in the case of Joe Biden, where it's an age of experience in politics and in governing. And then even some of those who support Donald Trump, his experience in the business world and in marketing, they're going to look at that as something that probably should be honored. How that's going to affect the candidates themselves might be a bigger challenge. And I hate to go back to the convention process, but I feel like I need to hammer this because it's something most Americans don't understand. If we go through all of the election process and presidential preferential primaries, and these two are the assumed nominees, and one or both of them have a health crisis before the convention delegates have the authority to choose a different candidate. And there is some discussion that with Joe Biden's current mental status and health and age, that there's a discussion of actually doing something at the convention to choose a different candidate. And obviously, there's a long shot with Donald Trump as well. Some of the more establishment Republicans still don't like him. However, you also have to remember where these delegates are elected from. They're actually taken from the state parties, which are usually super partisan people, not the moderate voters who normally decide elections.
And Michael, that's all the time that we have for this week's segment. But thank you so much for joining us here on the ICT Newscast. We really do appreciate your analysis and just all the knowledge that you have to share with us.
Great. Thanks, Pauly. I enjoy having me.
We are all children born of water. It is where all life begins. Water embraces and protects us. We revere it in our homes. We need to live close to water. It nourishes and cleanses us. All living things know this. Sometimes water is gentle and floats in the air. Sometimes water is harsh and powerful. Sometimes it catches the sun's rays. Water changes with the seasons, alive and always moving, even when no one is looking. Water is patient. Water endures. Water brings clarity. Water purifies our thoughts. Water brings us together. Water is holy. Water helps us heal. Water is medicine.
We turn now to Big Sky Country in Montana, where Poet Laureate Chris Latre is shining a spotlight on native language revitalization. ICT's Renaudin Birkenbuell has more for us.
Bonjour, Indinowe Maganadug. And what that means is hello, all of my relatives in Anishinaabe, which is Ojibwe. I just like to remind people that we are indeed all relatives as human animals and relatives to all of our non-human people that we share the world with. And I just like to say that right at the get-go, just to make it clear that that's where I'm coming from as a storyteller or poet. I just think it's important to recognize our kinship with everything that we share the world with. In Montana, we have 12 recognized tribes, and depending on what languages you count, you're upwards of 13 different tribal languages. And one thing that we all have in common as tribal people is the need to revive our languages. And, if I can speak mine and inspire someone to learn a few words in their language, then that's what I'm going to do. And, there are a few immersion schools around Montana as well. There's one on the Flathead Reservation. I know there's at least one on the Blackfeet Reservation up on Fort Belknap. And you can immerse students, and what an immersion school is where every subject, all you do is speak that language. And language isn't something that's separate. Language plays a role in whatever it is you're studying, whether it's math, whether it's history, any of the sciences. But it has to extend beyond the school day. If your family isn't all in, and if the students can't come home and teach their parents and elders living at home, and that's the challenge. If it's not happening at home, then it's not really happening. And that. It's a long game. It's a few words at a time. It's a few phrases at a time. And over a couple generations, maybe we have a dozen first language speakers to maybe 30. And then another generation, maybe we have 100. So it's a long game. It's nothing that's going to happen in my lifetime. It's one of the most important things we have to do. We need to get more fluent speakers because nothing connects you to culture and tradition the way language does. There's concepts that exist in an indigenous language that just simply do not exist when we're speaking the colonists' language. And for us to be serious about preserving our culture, which is not a racial thing, it's a cultural thing, we have to focus on language. When you're living tied to a specific place, your language reflects that. And I have a friend who was the first person to get a master's degree in linguistics from the University of Montana in Salish.
Wow.
And her master's thesis was on how there's something like 41 ways in Salish to say from here to there. And it's all, based on the time of the year, what the weather conditions are like, the distance, all of these things that are critical if you are a culture that is tied to the landscape. And that's profound. And we don't have that in English. We still have the land, and we still have the spirits of the land that are trying to communicate with us. We just need to do a better job of listening again.
Thank you for your time, and I hope we can visit with you again sometime for ICT News.
I'd be happy to. Thank you. Or miigwech, as we say in Ojibwe. Chi miigwech. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Mike Nuwak Nugan Nooch. Hello everyone, I am Ute. Mike Nuwak Nugan Nooch. Mike is hello. Nuwak is everyone. Nuga is I am. And Nooch is Ute. Mike Nuwak Nuga Nooch.
Growing up, I've always wanted to help people. I remember stories of my mom telling me, walking down the aisle at the grocery store and just asking people, how are you doing today? As a nurse, we're taught to lay hands, and that's so much healing. A lot of people don't get that loving touch. And as a nurse, going back to the reservation, I think, man, like how much impact can you make just loving people right? I think for a long time, the Native American people have been fed this lie of you're dependent upon, say, the government. But I would love to create a culture where it's the Native American that says, I'm doing this so that I can make my community better. I'm doing this so that I could bring commerce into my community. I'm doing this so that I can have the resources to help others.
Two-Spirit powwows are growing in size and in popularity across the country. They are inclusive gatherings to recognize and celebrate the LGBTQ+ community. We take you now to San Francisco, California, for an inside look at what's believed to be the first Two-Spirit powwow in the U.S. I have this interview with Angel Fabian, who is the executive director of the Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirits, also known as Bates. For the folks who didn't get the chance to attend the Bates Two-Spirit powwow, tell us about it.
The Bates Two-Spirit powwow was funded as a need from Two-Spirit and IndigiPolitics community members to be able to participate in our traditions. And over the years, we have been able to welcome back and create these spaces, these sober spaces, to welcome back folks into the sacred circle, whatever their gender expression, whatever they feel representing. And it's a day-long event filled with amazing vendors, both Two-Spirit and allies, food vendors on the outside, and then inside the arena, the powwow, which includes gore dancing, includes mexicas, Two-Spirit mexicas were also participated, and then a lot of honoring of community members and visionaries that we have in our larger community. And then the dance contests, along with some amazing drummers. We had a northern drum, a southern drum, and then the categories, which are degendered. So we do not gender the categories. And then, like many traditions, including mine, my language is not gendered. And so we allow folks to present themselves as they need to present themselves.
Describe to us how this event got its start to begin with, especially now that it's been in the making for over a decade.
So this is the first open public Two-Spirit powwow in the nation and actually in the world. Initially, there was a need, and everything results as a result of a need. For community members who did not feel welcome in traditional, mainstream, heterosexual, sometimes colonized spaces, and did not feel welcomed coming into those events or those circles as their authentic selves. And so with permission and guidance from elders, community members in our Bates community, which is, we're predominantly a volunteer-run organization, organized and spoke to folks and reached out to folks throughout Indian country and created this event 13 years ago. The first Bates powwow happened at the San Francisco LGBT Center. They did not know what to expect. Lo and behold, it was standing room only. There was such a need for that type of spaces that honored all of our identities and all our complexities, and highlighted Two-Spirit and IndigiPolitics community members.
Something you made me think about is joy. And I think about how powerful it must have been to witness so much Indigenous joy going on at the Two-Spirit powwow. Simultaneously, however, I also think about the almost daily attacks on the LGBTQ+ community. Can you describe for us how those two notions coexist at the same time?
Definitely. We honor the medicine that is created through these types of events. As you may know, or as your audience may be aware, the highest rates of houselessness in indigenous communities is among trans-identified Two-Spirit community members. The highest rates of suicide among our young people in indigenous communities is among Two-Spirit and indigiqueer youth. So to be able to create these beautiful spaces, these healing spaces, these joyful spaces, to celebrate each other in our existence and to give folks hope. Wow. We can't, we need to create and continue creating across Turtle Island and, to the south and to the north, these types of spaces because they're critical to our existence and they're critical to our survival.
That was Angel Fabian of the Bay Area American Indian Two Spirits talking about their Two-Spirit powwow. I had the chance to attend the Phoenix Two-Spirit powwow over the weekend where I had a really amazing and fun time. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.